In this lesson, you will learn best practices for setting up test sheets in the test case design section of Tricentis Tosca. When you begin to create multiple test sheets in Tosca, you should consider reusability of data from test sheets. This would mean converting any attribute structures from test sheets that will be used again into classes. These classes can then be amended either immediately or during the course of the project to include all necessary data variations. We recommend that you use the core attribute structure of administration with business relevance no, precondition and process with a business relevance yes, and finally verification with the business relevance result. Each of these attributes can then be populated with sub-attributes and instances. To also reflect an agile methodology, you can use test case design with the given, when, then structure. This is a template intended to guide the writing of acceptance tests for user stories. An acceptance test for a user story should contain given, which will describe context and precondition, when, which will indicate actions which are carried out, and then, which reflects a particular set of observable consequences or outputs. An acceptance test for our web shop example would be, given that a customer is registered and address is available, when the customer attempts to order a product with different shipping methods and product combinations, then the checkout should correctly calculate the shipping costs and add them to the total price of the order. You can also set up the structure of your test sheet in advance in another tool, for example Notepad or Microsoft Excel. This structure can then be copied from the clipboard into the test sheet. In Notepad, you simply write each attribute on its own line, and tab indentations indicate when an attribute should be copied as a sub-attribute of the previous one. You can then copy all. Right-click on the test sheet and select Create Element Structure from Clipboard from the mini toolbar or from the ribbon at the top of the page. You will see the attributes being created. Copying from Microsoft Excel is similar. Each attribute has its own cell and its own row. Rather than tab indentations, you will use one column to the right to indicate when an attribute should be copied as a sub-attribute of the above one. You will then copy all and use the Create Element Structure from Clipboard option on the test sheet level. A similar procedure can be applied to instances and requirement structures as well. For full details on how to use these features, please look in the manual. There is also a MOOC dedicated to this subject. Other things to keep in mind when considering readability. Use short and comprehensible test case names and explicitly mention the test focus. Create instances for attributes which describe the test focus. Use characters to mark instances as straight through, valid, and non-valid. Expand attributes for which you require more detailed information. Use comprehensible names for attributes and instances. Check the whole test sheet for readability. If you use concrete or value attributes, put them under a logical attribute where possible, to make it clear what the values are used for. Use classes only if they are reused at least twice. The attributes in the test case should be described in business language, instead of the more technical language of modules and test cases. Each test case or test case instance should be meaningful and understandable. It should test a business functionality and should be linked to a requirement. Each test sheet instance should have a clear and defined verification. Test case variations should be created based on equivalence classes to provide maximum coverage with minimum redundancy. Attributes, if there are more than 6 to 8 on one level, should be structured beneath other attributes, i.e. sub-attributes. The final test sheet is assigned to the test case template so that all the required test cases are instantiated for execution. Boundary value instances are not needed in a regression test, as functionality around the boundaries is not likely to change from release to release.